Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's live session. So, today we have gathered here on this very special occasion of World Rabies Day, and we will be focusing and shedding light on a critical global health issue that is rabies. Rabies is a deadly yet preventable disease that affects both humans and animals. And on this World Rabies Day, we aim to raise awareness, dispel myths, and emphasize the crucial role that vaccination plays in saving lives of human beings and animals. So we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Vivek Arora, who will be taking us through all the questions that we have and will be answering all the questions and will be telling us how important vaccination can be when it comes to a very deadly disease called rabies. So we welcome you, Dr. Vivek. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. So starting with the very first question, why is rabies considered as a deadly disease, and we have recently come across a very devastating case of rabies also in the last week in the country. So why is rabies considered to be a deadly disease?
See, first of all, I am sure the audience would be aware of the fact of what is called as a zoonotic. Zoonotic means a disease which can come from animals to human beings. So, rabies is a zoonotic disease. That, having said that, the other important aspect is rabies is a disease where diagnosis is difficult, and the most other important thing is rabies means virtual death because there is no treatment to it. It's a viral disorder. It's can is very preventable, and it's unfortunately more of a problem of global south now. If we categorize between global north and global south, the incidence of disease is higher in global south. And if, because a lot of human population in India is still gets affected with it or actually dies with it, WHO recognizes India as an endemic country for rabies, which is why the relevance of rabies in terms of human health and also the resources which you actually spent on controlling it are far higher. And if the disease is eradicated from India, then you can understand a lot other resources can go into very well focused research, prevention of other diseases that ail human mankind.
So when we speak about rabies, how can people understand, like, how is rabies transmitted from to humans, and what are the primary sources of infections of it?
See, rabies is, or the fear of among people
When we
is
speak about
rabies is
rabies, how can people
uh,
understand, like, how is rabies?
by saliva of a dog. Uh, and that is where a little bit of myth comes because people think all dogs carry rabies. Rabies is not carried by dogs. Yes, a bite of a rabid animal can infect them with rabies, right? So there has to be a source of infection for rabies to occur, first of all. Secondly, it's completely preventable, which is to say that if your pet is immunized, vaccinated, then rabies can't happen. This precondition of immunization, of course, comes with several other preconditions or rather pitfalls, wherein vaccination failure, lack of generation of antibodies can cause a little bit of dilemma. But then again, depending upon the extent of bite, area of bite, WHO has laid certain guidelines which determines how a post-exposure protocol has to be instituted for helping a suspected bitten dog bite case. But there are pre-exposure dog bite protocols available as well, wherein both human and animals can be immunized, making sure that they don't suffer with rabies. Yes, the rabies virus is spread through saliva. So, having said that, if you're bitten by a rabid animal, or in endemic countries like India, if you're bitten by a dog who is not immunized, I'm repeating, a dog who is not immunized, whose vaccination records cannot be found, or a current rabies vaccine cannot be produced. It's always better and in safe in regard of that person or an animal that they should be immunized with a post-exposure rabies protocol.
Okay. And when it country, there is very little or able to run that the awareness on the vaccination part of it. And last week only I figured a case wherein a father was fighting for from a doctor about tetanus injection and not a rabies vaccination. Uh, so, what are some common misconceptions or myths you come across when it comes to rabies vaccination, and how can we bust them, address them?
See, whenever there is an ambiguity, uncertainty about a certain aspect, of course, scientific principles, sociologically available principles are used, certain precautionary measures are introduced, and there comes the role of state, comes the role of NGOs, comes the role of civil society organizations to spread awareness on it. The biggest example for India is polio. Ultimately, with door-to-door vaccinations, mass vaccinations, informing people about the correct vaccinations, we reached to a point where we managed to eradicate rabies from India. Sorry, polio from India. And the same example can be put into rabies as well. When we talk about rabies, first of all, we must be aware that vaccinations has to be given. It's not going to harm him or harm a particular individual. And excess vaccine, we all have seen this in the example of COVID, and excess vaccine hasn't harmed anyone. We took one vaccine, then government came up with a regulation of booster in 4 weeks time. We all took a booster in 4 weeks time. Then came a third precautionary dose as well, and we all took the precautionary dose of COVID too. So that is the apprehension or uncertainty that has to be dispelled among mind of people that getting a vaccine done is not going to harm your child, is not going to harm your pet in any manner, given you arise to a case of confusion because you're talking of a disease where diagnosis means death.
Right. And how can parents specifically teach their kids about the importance of vaccination? Like, how can they convey that this vaccination is not gonna harm you? How can parents, transcribe this message to their kids?
See, I would say the bigger aspect to it is children who go and play, and of course, children can't be confined in the house, or there's a, exposure to animals, or certain uh, children are and even adults are enthusiastic enough to be working with animals. They should be educated for a pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is to say that 0, 7, 21 days of your vaccinations and then you're done with for a year, so that you're covered from the beginning, because it's an accident wherein an animal can bite you out of fear, out of anger, out of pain, and that is in most of the situation is an inadvertent response or an action towards something or someone reacting to it. Having said that, and we all having realized that, the NGOs working in this field should encourage volunteers who come to them are immunized before they start to work for them. And thirdly, the role of education institutes, schools, parents to that regard, when vaccinations will go a long way in making sure your child or the person is healthy and is able to prevent, God forbid, there is a uh, uncertain doubt or rather the immunization status of a pet is not sure once he bites him or once the animal bites the individual.
And in your experience, have you also come across a specific group of, region or people where rabies vaccination should be, should become particularly critical?
See, the requirement of rabies vaccine is pan India, but the other important thing is that uh, Whenever we talk about immunizing stray animals, feral dogs, feral cats, I know it's easier said than done, and there are very large practical feasibility issues to it. But one single dose vaccine is not sufficient until it comes up with a booster of that. So the booster has to be repeated in 3 to 4 weeks' time so that you can say for sure that the pet is immunized or the animal is immunized for next 1 year.
Okay, so that were all the questions that I had for today's live session, Dr. Vivek. Thank you so much for answering all of those for us. And I think on this World Rabies Day, we are able to at least reach out to a chunk of audience who can understand how important vaccines can be for us and how it is not that harmful. It is not at all harmful. It will save life, and eventually, if we all take action, we will be able to eradicate
Absolutely.
rabies from the country as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
joining us today. We'll
Thank you.
meet again
Thank you for
till
inviting me.
next time, and
Thank you.
we will
Sure.
be going live again at 6 o'clock for the diabetes live session. Till then, thank you so much for joining.